Rachel Holt from Nesson.com. Welcome to our Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm joined by Adam Rank of NFL Media. He's on the new show Fantasy and Friends on the NFL Network. He's kind of a big deal. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Oh, you're much too kind in your introduction. You are the big deal. I think now that I tell people that I'm on with Rachel, everyone's like, what? Like I'm becoming big in New England just for being in your presence.
Have you been speaking to my mom?
That's exactly what I've been talking to. She's like, you know what? You're doing very well. She's like, Rachel's way better than you, but you're fine. Like, it's the backhand. Like, no, you're fine. Like, it's never like that. You're great, but it's like, you're okay.
Well, I know your content, but can I give you a big compliment? On the show Fantasy and Friends, everyone on that show dresses very sharp, so I have to give you kudos for that.
Oh, well, thank you very much. We got Aaron Coscarelli on that show, so we got to kind of keep up, you know. It's like, otherwise, if it was three dudes, we'd just be slobs. But
right.
You're like, oh, lady, you're like, yeah, I got to dress up a little bit. So we try to keep up with her, and I hope we're doing a good job.
Yeah, you're doing a good job. I mean, no one wants to stand next to her, I don't think, but you guys are making it look good. So the big week one of the NFL regular season is over. Now that we've had a few days to digest everything, for you, what was the biggest surprise last week?
You know, there was no surprise that Antonio Brown was as good as advertised. I was kind of surprised he didn't get 3 touchdowns. I'll put it that way. No. I think, though, but of course, when it comes to week one, it's all about the disappointments and the guys who didn't come through for you. And Bryant is probably one at the top of the list. For whatever reason, the NFL wants to make the catch rule so complicated because I feel that everybody sitting at home is thinking like, you know what, we need these rules more complicated. I was too busy having fun enjoying football, but let's put in a bunch of video replays and all that kind of nonsense. And the one poor part, or bad part I should say, for Bryant is that he's replaced Calvin Johnson as the receiver who gets the most scrutinized and has the most catches overturned. So congratulations, I think, because it's kind of a dubious honor. And in addition to that, I think it was Monday night as well, Todd Gurley, who some people had as their top running back, some people might have even made him their top overall selection. That wasn't the game that you wanted to see right out of the gate. And now this week they got the Seattle Seahawks. But the good news for anybody who's holding on to Todd Gurley is that he's played pretty well against Seattle in the past, and this Rams coaching staff isn't good, but what they're good at is playing well against their division opponents. So at least there's some glimmer of hope.
Okay, so I have to bring this up. I don't want to get you fired up right away, but I am going to. I understand you're a Los Angeles Rams fan, correct?
Well, let's put this out there. I am an old school. Well, listen, I'm an LA fan through and through. I think we've established that over the course of our tenure, and I was a fan of the Los Angeles Rams. I grew up 18 minutes from the stadium, so I was a fan, but they left. So I wasn't. I'm like, I'm not going to follow them to St. Louis. It's like, you know, your college girlfriend moves away, goes back home or whatever, and you're like, all right, fine. And then she goes out and has success in St. Louis, and good for her. I'm glad that they had a good time. And now that you've moved back into town doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to reestablish a relationship. I've been courting the Chicago Bears for the last 22 years, so I don't necessarily feel that I'm in the mood. I don't feel that I am in the mood for a new girlfriend, so whatever. Plus, they're still wearing the clothes that St. Louis bought them. And I don't even know. Like, listen, they got a game this week, you know, coming up. I don't know that they're going to play it in L.A. Like, judging from their history, I don't know that perhaps I'll get a call today and be like, hey, by the way, we stopped by St. Louis. It means nothing. It's just lunch. And then next thing you know, Sunday they're warming up in the Edwards Jones Dome or whatever that world's famous Walmart, world's biggest Walmart, I should say, whatever that is. So I guess that was a long answer to a short question that you probably weren't anticipating. I love how you phrased like, I don't want to get you fired up, which is exactly what happened. I feel that you did want to get me fired up.
You sound like
question, but I appreciate that.
You sound like quite the scorned, I guess, fan in this point, or in your analogy, the ex-boyfriend. So scorned that the girlfriend moved away. Good for you, though, because they didn't score a point. It was brutal. Luckily, all of us East Coast people were, for the most part, asleep. On the West Coast, you were probably watching, crying a little bit. So what's your prediction for them this season? I have to ask you.
I'm looking at a 5-11, 6-10 type of team. Again, they're going to come out. They're going to play really well against Seattle. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually beat them. the one thing about this coaching, I mean, this is what they do every year. They lose a bunch of winnable games, and then they win some games they probably shouldn't. So they go to ownership and, hey, look, we're close. We were 4-2 in our division. If this was college football, we would have gone to the playoffs. And they do that kind of stuff. And it's kind of unsightly because I've been still, obviously I follow the NFL, so I see this kind of things happening. And it's a terrible thing. And I'll be honest, and what a lot of you people, I don't mean it like that, like you people, but a lot of the bad rap that Southern California sports fans get is somewhat deserved, in that if you don't win and you don't win immediately, people are going to lose interest. And I think this team's on the verge of being the Clippers. Like, they're going to get clippered, and they could end up just being irrelevant at some point because people will just be like, yeah, whatever. Especially, because the Dodgers are going to be in the playoffs. The Angels might not make the playoffs. The Lakers have a lot of great young players. The Kings have been really good over the last, 5-6 years. So there's a lot of things. The Galaxy are awesome. So it's like, we have options. We have good teams out here, and we also have a lot of other things to do, which I always used to fight that label, but now it's like, yeah, it is what it is. It's like, listen, if you're going to put out terrible movies, like, I'm not going to go. Like, if Chipotle keeps giving us bad burritos, I'm not going to continue to go to that store, So I feel like it should be the same way with sports. I don't know why people put up with it.
Well, we just put up with anything in New England because we're always cold in our houses in the winter and miserable. I have to ask you about another prediction you had, Antonio Brown. On Fantasy and Friends, you made a bold prediction that Antonio Brown would finish the season with 20 touchdowns. He has 2 down already. Is this his year or what?
Yeah, I guess I was being a little conservative. He's on pace for 32. One of the most telling things, and we talked about this a little bit on the show on Tuesday, is that on that 4th and 1 play when Antonio Brown scored his first touchdown, he was double covered. And if you look at the replay, Eli Rogers was pretty wide open in the middle of the field. I think Sammy Coates was also open as well. But Eli was stupidly open, and Ben Roethlisberger didn't even look his way. He's like, I'm going for the end zone. I'm going to force it in to Antonio Brown. So I feel that even if Eli Rogers gains a little bit more trust from his quarterback, Antonio Brown is still going to be the first look. And until Le'Veon Bell comes back, which would be in week 4, there's really not going to be anybody there competing for him for targets. So I think that it's a pretty reasonable prediction. I know a lot of people, it seems outlandish because Antonio Brown for a long time wasn't a huge touchdown scorer, but he's added that facet of his game. This offense looks dialed in. Todd Haley wants to score 30 points every week. You saw at the end of the game, too, when they were blowing them out, all the starters were still out there. You're like, I love this. I mean, that's exactly what you want as a fantasy enthusiast, is an offensive coordinator who's willing to go out there and run up the score. You're like, yeah, more of this, please. So I'm feeling pretty confident about my prediction.
Okay, well, I have to ask you about some other guys that came up big in week 1. Jameis Winston threw for 281 yards, 4 touchdowns. Do you start him in week 2?
This is a tougher matchup going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Plus, they're going on the road, which is always, I think people might make too much of it, but I know MJD, a former Jacksonville Jaguar who had to do a lot of those cross-country trips, said, listen, it is kind of a big thing. And I love Jameis this season. I was surprised with the 4 touchdowns because Atlanta's defense, their secondary is actually the strength of their defense. Listen, their defense isn't great, but it's like finding like one good thing at Applebees. You're like, yeah, right, the Southwest nachos aren't bad. It's like nothing else is great, but like, yeah, this is passable. So that's kind of the way the Falcons' pass defense is. So I was a little surprised at the 4 touchdowns, like that Mike Evans got involved. Even Austin Seferian-Jenkins scored a touchdown, which would count for double because that guy's, not great compared to other NFL players. So I really like him. It's a tough matchup this week. I would avoid him in DFS. If you have another option on your bench in standard leagues, I would consider. Like if you had somebody like Matthew Stafford, I would certainly go with him. But I think over the long haul, anybody who took a chance on Jameis Winston is going to be pretty pleased with that. And if he's still available on your waiver wire, I think that he's worth the investment to pick up.
Okay, I disagree strongly because I love Applebees, so right
Oh,
there.
I didn't mean to
Yeah.
besmirch your favorite restaurant.
That's all I could listen to after that. I blacked
You
out for whatever
lost
you said
everything
about
I said.
Jameis.
I'm so sorry.
I was angered.
Listen, Applebee's is fine, but no, it's not. It's not good. I'm sorry.
All right, we agree to disagree. What I can agree on, though, you gave me some big points last week because you told us to draft Spencer Ware in the wake of Jamal Charles' injury, and you didn't let me down. He had 129 receiving yards, a touchdown. He came up big. You single-handedly won me my matchup with that advice, so thank you very much. I owe you a big thank you.
You're welcome. I'm gonna leave. I'm out. So
Yeah.
that's it for me forever. Because I feel like once I hit one of those, I'm like, I gotta go. I don't
Right.
want to. I'm on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show, and I'm like, yeah, I'm good at 2,500. Like that's cool. This is fun. Like I can go to Vegas and blow all this money. I'll have a good time. Reach. I'm out.
This is where our podcast will end. Yep, that was a high point. But now I'm going to ask you to do it again. If you can make a prediction like that, we'll talk about Keenan Allen, who went down with an ACL tear. Is there any guy you think can replace him that people might be able to pick up at this point or use as a starter? I know this is a tough one.
Yeah, I feel that most people, once they saw Keenan Allen go down, and I'm always the guy who hangs on to their players even when they're on IR, at least for, a couple of days, because I don't want to be callous. I think everybody would have looked for Will Fuller if he was available on your waiver wire. Like of all the guys who are waiver wire fodder in most leagues, like he's the one who can step into your lineup right now and make an impact for you. A lot of the other guys are going to be speculative ads. Tajay Sharp, I thought, is a good player. Like I was really pleased with him in the preseason. He's somebody that we didn't get to see a lot. I know he played at UMass, so perhaps a lot of you got to see him play in college. But I got to profess my ignorance with him. Is I just knew him from the combine and that he was running good routes and he really graded out very well. So I was pleased to see him come along. There'll be some good matchups. Actually, this matchup against Detroit this week will be pretty good for him. So if he's still available on your waiver wire, that's obviously somebody I would go with. I know a lot of people have asked about Travis Benjamin perhaps being the number one guy in San Diego, but the problem with that is similar to the problem that Randall Cobb had last year in that's really not his gig. That's really not where he thrives. He's good as a number two guy, the second option coming up, and the Chargers are going to look at Tyrell Williams, who it just seems to be like one of those assembly line receivers for the Chargers. I know anybody who's watched Chargers football over the last decade knows that they've always just had these 6'5", long, lanky receivers who always seem to come out and be productive for them, be it, Malcolm Floyd or Dontrell Inman or Vincent Jackson even, and you could all go all the way back to David Boston. It's like the Chargers create a player on Madden and just create a 6'5" receiver and okay, here we go. I don't know. Listen, he's certainly not of the caliber of Keenan Allen, and not a lot of guys are, but he's, again, somebody to pick up, put on your bench, see what happens. Phillip Rivers, though, hasn't played very well without Keenan Allen. His passer rating goes from 100 to the mid-80s. His touchdowns take a significant drop. So it's going to be something that you wait and see, but certainly at this point, you're just picking up somebody, see if you can strike gold, and go from there.
A lot of questions with the injuries going on around here. Someone I have to ask you about too, Des Bryant. He's on my team, didn't come up big for me. And Adrian Peterson on a lot of other people's teams didn't come up big for them. Are either of these two guys a concern for you moving forward?
Adrian Peterson should be fine. He's played over the course of his career without a lot of great quarterbacks. You would prefer he had Teddy Bridgewater back there. But I think once Sam Bradford gets involved, that'll be a little bit easier because Stephon Diggs showed that he's a pretty capable receiver. He had a pretty nice game last week, 106 receiving yards. So really liked what he showed. He had some promise last year. He was somebody that we discovered in the Danger Zone, a little segment that we like to do over there. And it was on the old fantasy show, of course. So he's a good surprise. So I think ultimately once the season gets rolling, that right when you're in the midpoint of the season, Adrian Peterson will be fine. Des Bryant, again, I feel like the thing is Dak Prescott had no problems going to him in preseason. And I know you don't want to overreact to what you're seeing in the preseason, but Dak was pretty good about it. And it just seemed like when he got into the game against the Giants, he became much more conservative, which is why somebody like Cole Beasley ended up with a huge share of the targets. It's like, look, you're not going to win ball games that way. If you want to keep games close, that's fine. But Dak Prescott was good in the preseason because he was taking chances, he was trying to go downfield, and he was trying to put the ball in the hands of their best player. And that's the one thing that you have to recognize, and that's the one thing the coaches have to tell him is like, look, Dez Bryant is our best player. Get the ball in his hand and move forward from there.
Okay, a lot of questions too about the tight ends. I think everyone's having trouble finding a tight end that works for their team. A rough first week for them. A lot of people, of course, used one of their top picks on Gronk. He misses week 1 with a hamstring injury. We have to monitor him over there. And then Zach Ertz, another top pick. He's dealing with a rib injury. He's out this week. Are there any good bets at tight end heading into week 2?
Eric Ebron is the one that jumps off the page, probably already claimed off the waiver wire, and I'm sure that's who everybody was going after. He probably might have been drafted in a lot of leagues too. It was touch and go for me because I've had a lot of problems at tight end because on too many leagues I tried to get cute and get Jordan Reed, and I'm pretty sure I don't have Jordan Reed in any league, which is unfortunate. But looking at the waiver wire, I think a lot of people had high hopes for Kobe Fleener. I would hang on to him because traditionally the tight ends for the Saints always seem to come through, and I understand he's behind the curve right now, but I would still give it a little bit of time. You don't want to panic after week 1, but if you have somebody like Martellus Bennett or Jared Cook especially, like, oh, why did I buy into that nonsense? First of all, he's a Packer, should have known better right there. Aaron Rodgers is not going to help us out, but I'm looking at a couple of guys on the waiver wire. Jesse James is one who really stands out to me. Even though he didn't have a tremendous stat line in week 1 against the Redskins, the one thing that you really need to take note of is that he was on the field for 100% of their offensive snaps, which is huge. You want a guy who's on the field. You can't be productive if you're not on the field, obviously. So it didn't work out well for him this week. It's not like he went out there and put up huge points, but with tight ends, you're just looking for a little bit of consistency and having the opportunity to be out there because they are so hard to find. So I'm looking at him and picking him up here and there, and I feel like instead of some of those targets in the red zone going to, I think he went at Sammy Coates, it bounced off his shoulder pads and landed in the arms of Eli Rogers. I feel one of those could turn into a target for Jesse James, and he's got a great frame to him and everything about, like, everything that you like to see. So he would be the one guy I would definitely be keeping an eye on.
Okay, good to know. My last question for you is survivor pools. And last week, a lot of us who do survivor pools were given a mini heart attack. First, when you and I talked, we mentioned the Seahawks and the Chiefs as being safe bets. They both ended up winning, but the Seahawks squeaked out a narrow 2-point victory over the Dolphins, and the Chiefs, they won an OT. So this week, which teams have a good chance to pull off the W?
Yeah, that Chiefs one was crazy, but you know what? Never a doubt. I had faith, and they came through, so that was pretty cool.
They did.
The one team, I know it's too obvious, and it seems like a big risk to go after the Carolina Panthers this early in the season, but you know what? The 49ers coming off a Monday night win and having to travel cross-country, I just want to take that. I understand the Panthers are the one that people will get cute, and they want to hold on to that one and perhaps, save it in their back pocket. But you know what? Go get the wins right now. Don't leave wins on the table. When you have one, take it. You know what? Because a lot of times, especially depending on how big your league is, like, you don't want to be sitting there and eliminated in week 2 and have the thing end in week 5 and be like, why didn't I just take the Panthers when I had the opportunity? So I would take them, but if you took it, but I don't think anybody took them in week 1 against you would be out if you did. So they should be available. And also, you're just going to want to look at who's playing Cleveland. Baltimore's got them this week. This is probably a chalky one for a lot of people going after Cleveland week in and week out. And Baltimore, I'm not necessarily sold on them, but dude, it's Cleveland. Like, I'm pretty comfortable with that one. But in the one that we do one for Fantasy and Friends too. It's Survivor. We do it on NFL.com. If you look for the Fantasy and Friends League, if you guys want to get into that one, it'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, I took the Panthers.
The Panthers.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm taking the win and moving on.
Okay, well, what about in the Panthers' mindset? The Patriots have the Dolphins at home. Jimmy G looked good last week. There was a lot of questions about it. I mean, they're running pretty smooth. Do you think the Patriots got this one too, or?
Yeah, I like that pick. I really do. Again, I'm sitting here preaching not to hold on to teams for too long, but I really want to wait till week 5 and play the Patriots against the Browns with Tom Brady returning.
Right.
And I just can't wait for that game. I'm so excited for that game. Listen, I love the Bears, but it's like I don't think that I'm more excited for any game except for that one. Browns and wait, it is the Browns, right? Am I getting that correct?
Yeah, you're right. You're just waiting for a complete massacre to use the Patriots, aren't you?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I want to have the ultimate laugher. So that's why I'm waiting. I did think about the Dolphins because Tannehill's awful at New England. Well, Tannehill's just not great. What does he have? Like three touchdowns and 7 interceptions in his career. I know it's awful. I just was looking at the stats earlier this morning, so there was easily one I was thinking about. But again, I want to wait till week 5. Again, as I'm sitting here preaching, like don't leave wins on the table. It's still tough. You still got an inexperienced quarterback coming off a big win, coming off a cross-country trip. I would think for most teams that's trouble. For a Bill Belichick team, that's not going to be trouble. But again, like I just have the faith. I'm going to wait. That's just one. I just want to wait for week 5 and go at it that way.
Okay, I have no problem with that. Wait for Brady to come back. That's all I have from you. I really appreciate the time, as always. We're looking forward to an exciting week 2. Any other final comments you got for us?
Well, Rachel, of course, the pleasure is always on this side of the phone. I know you talked about Spencer Ware, and he was good for us in week 1, and I had him a lot too. I know a lot of people have asked about him going forward this week. He's battling a little bit of an injury. Keep an eye on the injury report, but I will say this. Alex Smith is facing the Houston Texans this week. The Texans blitzed 44% of the time against the Chicago Bears. That was the 4th highest total in the NFL. But when Alex Smith is blitzed, he's actually a very good quarterback. He has a passer rating of 100, over 100 actually, when he was blitzed. That's going back to the 2015 numbers. He doesn't run the ball. He's very athletic, but he doesn't run out of the blitz a lot. He does have a lot of dump-offs, and he has a lot of safety valves. So I look for a good week from Travis Kelce, and of course, Spencer Ware, who made the majority of his points as a receiver out of the backfield. I look for another great week from him, even though he's got a tough matchup against the Texans. I think it's safe to play him once again. So I'm looking forward to that. And if it doesn't work out, I'm really going to hate myself for tacking that on at the end. But you know what? Let's go out in a blaze of glory.
Well, we had to trust you in week 1, so right now we have no other choice. I mean, you're our guy. You gave us good info, so until you're wrong, we'll keep on trusting you.
Well, I appreciate that, Rachel.
Thanks. We'll look out for you on Fantasy and Friends. Thanks for joining us, Adam.